So brief background on me. I don't know if it's relevant, but my story arc is I'm first generation, born in Miami Beach. I went to University of Florida, post-grad certificate at NYU. Along the way, I worked at Alvin Toffler's think tank, Alternative Futures Institute, my congressman in DC. I got smacked around pretty hard for not having an advanced degree, so decided to go to Wall Street instead. Worked for the oldest merchant bank and brokerage, Dominic & Dominic at the time. Founded 1870, been around. Consistently, membership badge, New York Stock Exchange 003 and 01 and 2 are out of business. So the culture that imprinted me about money and making money and wealth management was very long, old school type of insights and wisdom and character and integrity. And that really has informed a lot of my viewpoints and experiences along the way. The one notion I will share with you is that I learned on Wall Street is the value of time. And I used to joke when I started raising LPs and running hedge funds, I used to ask them, what do you want? I'll guarantee you 10% or 50%. What do you want? And they said, oh, 50%. I go, are you sure? Oh, yes. I go, okay, I'll give it to you in 100 years. So the notion of not understanding that there's always two sides of every coin and to really think things through thoroughly can keep you safe, but also make you high performing. And so that's a little bit of the principles that I bring from Wall Street. After Wall Street, I went to what I like to call Main Street, where I really started to create innovations in the public-private partnership sector that ended up being able to replicate and scale, and working with diverse groups, state governments, local governments, communities, poor and rural communities. We did about 600 multi-million-dollar infrastructure projects in 13 years through 16 public-private partnerships that I helped co-create and tilt up. And the insight that I drew from that is the power of key dispositions of people to be prime movers of action and to get things done. And if you think about talent acquisition and talent recruitment on your team, or even around you with your partners, being very clear on the dispositions that you're looking for can be very helpful, and to make sure that your vision of success will have the right engine coupled to it to drive it there. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about key dispositions here, but happy if anybody wants to reach out. We've got a pretty good eye on and lens on what those are for driving innovation and driving change and driving success in organizations and communities. And then after going and doing that for 13 years at a charitable think tank, I moved into working with my current sort of angel investing and early stage ventures, and that sort of culminated with the Dell Corporation and University of Texas tapping me to redesign and bring to market the Dell Social Innovation Challenge, where I had to come up with and formalize frameworks and tools for startup ventures, everything from ideation, design, pilot, scale, and exit, that would help them accelerate their progress in a way that could be done without having a hands-on engagement. And so that discipline was very helpful. We scaled to 6,000 teams in 100 countries in 18 months. After that design was launched, and it took me about 3 months to come up with the design. And then the Dell Social Innovation Challenge framework was so good in a sense that the executive director spun it out and commercialized it into a for-profit venture that just got acquired by Paycor, raised about $2.5 million on the framework, and then moved that into a successful private venture. So one of the insights there for me was that you should always look for non-dilutable capital to underwrite a lot of your risk and to the fullest extent that you can. So if you're doing hard tech or anything, I mean, and you have academic grants, you have government grants, it makes really good sense to stay on that meal train for as long as you can before you spin out into dilutionary capital and free market stuff. So that was another interesting learning. And then after that, after working and advising lots of startups, lots of places, I decided I'm up to my eye teeth in paper equity. I've had a couple of nice exits from those relationships, but I'm moving upstream to working with family offices and allocators under the new company that I co-founded with partner Travis Wallace called Time and Alpha, when our primary value add is we compress time to valuable results and increase the alpha of getting there. And that's me.
That's a pretty good me. So I will flip things over. I run Forward, built and sold a couple smaller companies, e-commerce, SaaS, media, and investing space prior to starting Forward, and have worked with companies on strategy, growth, product, fundraising. This is one of our big cores with Forward in our climate consulting collective, which if you guys haven't had a chance to check this out, we have quite a few different services that we focus on through other strategic partners and consultants in our network or on our team to help companies with fundraising, investing, grants, capital kind of strategy and structure with Rob, scaling, growth, partnerships, etc. We'll share more information in the chat. And we're at the end of this session going to have a Q&A and a bit of a chit chat on things that you guys would like to know. So if you have questions that you want Rob or myself to answer, post those in the chat channel or in the questions channel. For some reason, Circle has both. And we will come to those either when we have a chance or at the end of the program. But now we've got a little bit of a I can never get the term right, 5 alliances and frameworks for great capital creation, something to that effect of how Rob likes to present this as a framework. So Rob, I'm going to hand things over to you and be the peanut gallery to pop in with hopefully interesting questions whenever they come up. Sound good?
Sounds great. Yeah. There we are. Okay. Venture
value co-creation. What is it? What do you mean?
So co-creation means I had a good friend who ran a food snack business and these little Debbies and things like that. And I was in the HEB here in Austin, Texas at 4 a.m. and he's there and he's stocking the shelves himself. And he has a team. I go, Momo, what the hell are you doing here at 4 a.m.? He goes, stands up, looks at me, goes, there's no money in the office. So but the same thing is true for ventures. There's no money in your venture. You have to create that money, that value in a co-creative fashion with customers, with investors, with a lot of partners. And so if we can get the clarity of how to do that and across the 5 alliances, my representation to you is that will lead to accelerated success and higher value success. So that's the notion of value co-creation. If you hit to the next slide here, I'd like to speak a little bit to my expectations for achieving outcomes for you listeners this morning or this afternoon, wherever you may be. What happened there? There we go. So Matt has a hard time saying 5 alliances, but if we think about, you're in Switzerland, right? If you think about Europe, I don't think any European country ever did anything without considering adversaries and alliances, right? You don't go to war without imagining who's going to be helpful to you or adversarial. And in a venture, the same thing can be true, except that we're not very circumspect. We're not very expansive in that thinking. We think maybe chiefly about, okay, customer or investor. That seems to be almost the 2 principal domains in which we spend a lot of our thinking, and how do we want to attack that tactically, strategically, exceptional, dynamically, et cetera, et cetera. Those are absolutely essential. But more importantly, there's this understanding that there's really 5 categorical alliances of which ideal allies can emerge that will drive your success and progress. And when I talk about ideal allies, that's sort of like proper nouns and you actually knowing who you want to show up and ideally could have engaged with your venture. So hopefully, as we go through this framework, in your own mind, you'll be able to think of at least an ideal ally in one of these 5 categories that you haven't thought of before. And I would like that to be for at least, a majority of you. The last piece is what we'll introduce at the end of the presentation, which is a formal practice that we developed and actually was part of the Dell Social Innovation Challenge. And it's very, very helpful to really accelerate your abilities to understand your 5 alliances, understand the value that you can contribute to them, and understand the value you can capture from them, and do that in a way which really gets away from the creative hyperbolic lying that all 3 to 5 year plans stimulate you to do. I think 3 to 5 year plans are a fun exercise, but I think they're a waste of time as an output. And this is much more of a practical output because it focuses your time frame down to a year, which anybody, if you tell me what you can do in a year, I'm going to believe you. Because even if you have to white knuckle it and brute force it, you're going to make it happen. So this is another aspect of sort of managing time. So those are the 3 outcomes that I'd like to be successful with for you guys. I want you to gain this today. And for me, what I'd like to gain is for Matt to have a relationship with a few of you after this call in ways that Matt can be helpful to you and you can be helpful to Matt.
And before we go further, I want to rewind a little bit. And alliances makes me think of stakeholders. Mm-hmm. So how would you compare the 5 alliances framework with the more traditional view of stakeholders? So you've got your employees, your clients.
I hate the term stakeholder. It's so static. You're holding a stake. I mean, it's my stake. An alliance is dynamic. An alliance is changing and emerging. An alliance means that I'm not trying to come to you. You're coming to me. So I don't like stakeholders for all of the sort of connotative and denotative reasons. And also, I like to think of alliances as fluid, right? Stakeholder to me seems like a static position. You know, you're never going to change. You're going to be a stakeholder. I have to attend to you. That's horseshit. Excuse my French. The reality is that everybody's going to be moving together if it's done right. Because if you have an innovation, why would you want people to sit still where they are when your innovation emerges? No, you need them to change their behavior and adopt your innovation and promote your innovation. So the reason I like 5 alliances is not only because of the historical relevance and context that people grok it immediately, but also to impose this notion that it's a dynamic relationship that changes over time. And your allies will change as your organization and your venture grows. Your early stage allies will not be the same as your later stage allies. They'll be different. Some may come along for the ride all the way, but in reality, you really have to look across the terrain that you're currently in for new and emerging allies all the time.
You ready to kick it off into the allies?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's see if the rebels strike back.
So the 5 categorical alliances, not allies, but alliances for every venture are right here. So these can be termed, some of these can be termed stakeholders, but not all of them are represented in stakeholder land. Investors, team, partners, paying customers, and supportive communities. Supportive communities is probably one of the most profound and undervalued domains. And if you think about a supportive community for your venture, you might begin to realize that that's where all the other 4 ideal allies can often emerge from, right? So I'll give you an example. The public-private partnerships I ended up working with and using and creating alliances with state government agencies. In Texas, I had 5 state government agency partners. And the one alliance partner that I had was the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, which had the CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant Program, their $100 million fund. And what I didn't realize at the time is that that CDBG program was part of a larger supportive community called the Council of Support of CDBG Programs, which was a national organization. Once I got stuck into that supportive community, they took me everywhere. And that's how I got to 16 states. So the value of considering that there are ideal allies in each of these categories can be very helpful to you at any stage, even at ideation. So if we think about investors is really an aggregate term, right? For a lot of nuanced and different players in that realm. You've got angels, right? You've got early stage solo VCs. You've got, fiduciary VCs and private equity. You've got potentially grant makers as investors in banks, philanthropies, and on and on and on. But each of those individual investors have a different profile and a different way of interacting and relating with you. So, and go ahead, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, so then if you have your strategic alliances, do you have your strategic nemesis, so to speak? So that's something I know that's big in branding and marketing is.
Yeah, that's a great point to raise, because what I tend to do is to not spend time. There's already an overwhelming, what's your problem that you're trying, there's too much problem focused mindsets already rife throughout the industry. I think if we can stay with an opportunistic, who am I looking for and who should be looking for me? Because in reality, all innovators and entrepreneurs have as the status quo their enemy and incumbents. We have enemies all the time. It's just part of the game. So we have to overcome that resistance, not by focusing on it, but by finding those groups, those ideal allies that'll help us to get a foothold and then accelerate adoption of whatever it is we're trying to do. So you could absolutely create a failure map of all the potential people that could and categories.
Not what I was thinking. So the failure map will never get you started. It will hold you off. I was thinking more so on the strategic, having an enemy or specific kind of axis of evil that you're looking to conquer, and using that more in branding and marketing.
Absolutely. If there's something you can use as sort of a touchstone to spark energy and enthusiasm and everybody else, for sure. If you need to create an enemy to fight against and conquer, absolutely go for it. I think that's a wonderful motif that is probably, you go all the way back to antiquity in terms of the stories and how they're told, right? Overcoming a great evil. It's the hero's journey. So for sure, I think that's fine. But my point is that before you get to that level of strategy, I think it's incumbent upon anybody who wants to set out to start to really clarify the ideal allies in each of these 5 alliances. And what I've seen, and you can go and look at almost every successful billion or multi-billion dollar venture that started, they've figured out a way to master these 5 alliances. I mean, look at all of the top groups. They haven't just figured out how to manage their investors and their team and get talent, but they've managed their partners, they've managed their paying customers, and they've managed to support.
Some examples.
Yeah, well, look at the Musk at any of his organizations. He's played on all of these alliances. He's got incredible supportive communities, amazing paying customers, long-standing partners. The people are dying to work for him, even though some people are critical of how he runs his teams. Still, his investors, love him for the most part. It's for every company that he's done. I mean, you could take any other big company. Look at, the ones who have had trouble are the ones who didn't have supportive communities, right? Who ran afoul of not really working the room, whether it's at a government inquest or, a brand attack, for a boycott, right? So the notion is that if you can maximize the number of alliances, it's only going to increase the probability of your success and compress the time to achieving that success. So for early stage ventures, what are the most sort of typical investor ideal allies? Is it angels? Is it academic and in accelerators and in challenges? What has really in the climate space been the most typical investor ally?
I would say the typical allies are accelerators, incubators, and programs where you can get capital plus support, connections to mentors, clients. In general, investors won't be your early allies. They're more the ones you work with to get capital once you're at a later stage. But some of my favorites would be Plug and Play, Mass Challenge, Generator, etc. Those players that are early stage in the ecosystem. There's 2 different types of climate and sustainability companies. There's the hardware and there's the software ones. Hardware is hard and software is pretty fast and scalable. But for hardware especially, you need to get through those TRL levels and really building out the product, getting field trials, then paying customers, all of that, building up manufacturing or outsourced manufacturing. It takes capital, it takes time, and you probably haven't done this before, so you're probably going to need a couple of allies there, I would think.
So this is a really good point I want to stress. So the TRL, success, making progress around de-risking whatever it is you're bringing to market on both the science and the execution. That is a tough place to be, but I guarantee you there are people who love to invest in that specifically. They're not many, they're rare, but the challenge now is to say, that's my ideal ally. I need to find who is writing tickets and writing checks for this, or who is passionate about, if this science succeeds at this level, of the outcome that the science will deliver. And now I need to make the case to that ideal ally that they have to get us over this valley and this lack of funding period in order to get the outcome. So absolutely, even though we say they're not there, people are there if we can reframe the challenge for them in a way that they get the gain that they're looking for, right? Because we're not looking at a static snapshot of here's where I am, invest in me where I am. No, invest in me so I can get to this next level that you want.
When's the stage to think about this? Because it starts to feel really meta at some point.
Every stage. Every stage. Ideation, cocktail napkin, every stage. We live in a time where people are obsessed with activities, but what they really want is outcomes. But nobody's really talking about outcomes and framing them as entities or products that people can buy. And if you can make an outcome credible and believable and chunk it down, most people have roadmaps of activities. What's the roadmap of outcomes? What's the roadmap to success of an innovative technology, of hard tech? What's the possibilities that then we could look at future value and bring that back to a present value case of investment? Absolutely, we can do this, but people don't spend the time talking about outcomes. We talk about, well, we need to hire, we need to staff, we need 15 more engineers, we need this, we need that, we need a marketing team, blah, 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 blah. We need activity. I mean, investors' eyes glaze over. For what? For what do you want to spend all that? What's the outcome? So if we're going to speak about investors, I have very strong opinions that investors really are looking for credible ROI at every stage. That's it. If you show up and you have a market that looks like it can, handle $1 billion, great. You have my attention. But that's not the only thing that you need to show me. Let's get credible about your vision in the terms of the outcomes you think you're going to make. And the validation of those outcomes oftentimes is having clarity about why your other 4 alliances are going to show up and what they're going to gain. So if I go to an investor and I can say, I've got team members coming to me at below market rate here, I've got partners helping me compress cycle time and increasing resource acquisition, I've got paying customers who are lined up, ready to go, and I've got the support of these various communities, as an investor, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, okay. As opposed to, hi, I really want to make this hard tech work and I need 5 more engineers and I also need to hire a sales team and we think we can talk to these people over here. See what I mean? Big difference.
And let's go real world example. Can you take us through case study or example of company putting something like this into practice so that we can make it more tangible?
Well, yeah, I mean, and we will be skipping to the end of the core practice, but the idea is that if you can, so the specific outcome is getting investment from investors. Okay. So what's the typical way in which you do that? You make a deck, an executive summary, and you have a pitch, right? Will we agree?
Probably a couple pitches. You got to get 2 or 3 meetings with the VC.
Sure, but nonetheless, you're essentially, okay. And when you have a deck or an executive summary, you're not really talking about the gains that any of the 5 alliances are getting from you or the gains you're getting from your 5 alliances, correct?
Well, usually you are talking about in terms of what your kind of USP or value is for the customers you have and the traction, the partners that you have maybe for distribution, marketing.
Right.
Probably talk about team.
Right. But you don't really get down to the level that we're talking about here.
No, not specifically.
Exactly. So one of the CEOs of a venture, she was raising seed rounds, and I took her through the 5 alliance practice, and she used that, and she created what we'll talk about later on, which is a future annual value report, where she specifically outlined the gains that her 5 allies were going to get and the gains that her company was going to get from her 5 allies. And she put it into a 2-pager. And she handed that out to her prospective investors and said, here's where we're going to be in a year. Do you want to come along for the ride or miss it? So the clarity involved with her discipline of looking through and thinking about her ideal allies in a way of what are they gaining over a year of work with us and what are we gaining for them was more powerful than any other roadmap or pitch deck or executive summary could have been. And she was oversubscribed in 2 rounds. So my point is that clarity is your vanguard movement. clarity of value that you create for your investors, for your team. Why is your team joining you at below market rates? What are they getting out of that? Tell us. Why are your partners willing to bet on you when you don't have a product cash flowing in market? Tell us. Why are your paying customers really ready to pay the premium or to sign up and wait or whatever it is that they're doing? Tell us. What are they gaining from you and what are you gaining from them? It's a very simple but often overlooked level of detail that changes the game.
What's the process for founders, companies that want to go through something like this? So I know you do this with your consulting and advisory with Forward, but what's the process if people want to do this themselves?
Sure. Well, we'll give it away at the end if you want to sort of flip through.
Yeah, of course.
Here it is. That's it. Go back. There it is. So we have a practice guide for founders to think deeply about their 5 alliances so that they can come up with who their ideal allies will be, and to put it in a format that would suggest credible execution. In other words, we're not talking about what you did. We're talking about the result of what you did and what the gains are for each of those ideal allies and the gains for your venture over a year's period. If I took what has been typically a sort of a non-negotiable default, CEOs have to write a report to their investors. If you're a functional CEO, you're communicating, and it's usually typically in, if not monthly, quarterly, at least an annual report. So this format is known, but what I've done to change the format is I said, look, you're going to put the annual report a year into the future. You're going to write it in the past tense as if it's already happened, and you're going to name names and put down numbers. There's no player to be named later because this is historical. You know who showed up. So this core practice is iterative. You don't immediately come up with the ideal future annual value report. It takes some time. And what I also do is I make sure that if there's teams involved, everybody does their own future annual value report alone until they get it to a revised draft that they feel good about, and then they share for a couple of reasons, which now gets into team dynamics. Oftentimes on teams, especially with engineers who aren't really good salespeople of their own ideas, they can be overcome by a happy talker in the room. And also teams, there's an inordinate amount of pressure sometimes for convergence of thinking as opposed to divergence, which is where all the value lies. So what we want to do is we want everybody on the team to have their own viewpoint articulated about how they see the 5 alliances adding value. And what invariably happens is when everybody does it alone, new insights come out of those practices that end up being net value adding to the team. And then the team themselves can say, okay, let's take, Juanita's and James and Steve's ideas, and then mine can sit in the back for later, but these are the ones we want to lead with. You see what I mean? So it's a wonderful also team dynamic value building tool, as well as a great tool for a venture founder and CEO to start to understand how to communicate value co-creation across all of their 5 alliances, to the point where if you're in an elevator at any point in time, when you've done one of those practices and have it down, you're able to just sit there and hold forth and say, yeah, here's what you're going to get in the next year. You want to come along for the ride or miss it? Much more powerful.
Is there typically a most important alliance to consider first?
Okay, that's a great question. And here's where I always go with it. Yes, the most important alliance to focus on first is the one that brings you the most energy. Absolutely.
So team?
Energy. If that's what energizes you, thinking what team's going to get and thinking what team is going to deliver to you, then spend your time refining that future annual value report for team. Absolutely. Because that energy is infectious. When you get energized by something and you're in a room and you're excited by it, that energy is infectious to everybody that's in the room. If you're listlessly talking about something because, oh my God, I got to talk about this, sucking all the energy out of the room, that's not a way towards success. That's a way to fizzle and failure. So stay on the energized road and path, wherever it is. You'll find that those will shift, those lanes will interweave across these 5 alliances as you go. You may not ever be energized by one of the 5, and that's okay. If you get 3 out of the 5 done, your chances for success are significantly multiplied over having less than 3. If you get to all 5, success is inevitable. inevitable. Just get
So let's take it to the other side of the table then. So
sure.
when working with investors, funds, family offices with our consulting collective, how do you recommend that investors evaluate prospective companies with respect to these alliances in their deck, in their pitch, how they explain what they're doing?
Well, the beautiful thing about this is it's a due diligence, or I should say a creative diligence template for investors, right? If you have a founder and a CEO who can't explain to them, to an investor, the value of why team will be attractive and be retained. You know, if I ask a simple question, Matt, why is anybody joining your team? What are they getting out of it?
They're crazy enough to believe in our big picture vision. They're growing their career and their network. They're connecting with great people. They have something awesome on their resume in terms of working with the largest climate and sustainability ecosystem globally.
Yeah.
And then there's the upside of potentially what this looks like in the future.
Is that what they're telling you, or is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. I know a lot of them. It depends on the type of people joining the team. Some are joining it so they can get great other positions or future. Some want to be the center of their local ecosystem in Austin, Geneva, etc. Everyone's got their incentives.
And I bet if you ask them, I bet if you canvassed all of the people who are volunteering or below market or whatever, they'd all have different reasons, but there'd be an aggregate universal sort of like accord across what those reasons are, right? And then that is the evidence and the validation of what you could say to any investor or any future team member, right? Here's why people are saying what they're saying and why they're here and why they're staying. Here's why they're high performing. That is a powerful statement of value co-creation. And if you can relate that to an investor, that an investor thinks about that and sees that it's being very credible, that's another reason to invest, right? That eliminates a red flag. And likewise, if you do that, if you have the same conversation with an investor about your partners, why are your partners your partners? Why are your paying customers your paying customers? Why do you have champion customers? Why do you have those super customers who can't shut up about what you do? So the more we can answer that value co-creation question with the validation of what others are saying about you, the more powerful and credible your story.
For instance, with testimonials.
Testimonials are okay, but I would say that testimonials often fall short. I mean, they're a good starting point. But what you really want to do is you want to say, like, look, don't tell me what has worked. Tell me why you're still here. Tell me why you continue to be here, right? Testimonies are oftentimes too much backward looking, and we want to have forward looking stuff here, especially for raising money for the future.
And I feel like a lot of this could get lost in the weeds or become an infinite project of expanding and expanding and expanding. What's the 80-20 to get the most value out of a framework like this? How deep do you have to get into the alliances, the value creation?
It's just conversation. This is not we're in the age of Chat GPT. So what you want to have and understand is that this is not about a narrative. This is about energy. And if you're not getting energy in conversations with your team, your partners, and paying customers, then whatever they're saying is just worthless. So what this means also is this is a 1 degree, not a 2 degree, 3 degree research project. This is not anything you farm out. This is something you as a CEO and a founder do personally, as do the people on your team. And it's just based on conversations that achieve, or asynchronous email, whatever it is that you need for communication, that achieve a validation of energetic exchange. If you have that energetic exchange, you've got something amazingly powerful to build on. If you want to take it all the way down into the weeds later when you get big, because again, I think we're talking about startups here, not about 5,000, 500,000, organizations. We're doing a project right now with Siemens, which, is Siemens America's Healthineers, and, they have 800 salespeople. We're using this framework for the salespeople to understand their hospital customers' value co-creation requirements. So when they create a business case, they're looking at this lens for the hospital's investors, team, partners, paying customers, and supportive communities, and creating that value statement so that the hospital internal procurement buyer already understands the value of an advanced oncology solution being brought into their hospital and set up and running.
When's the best time for companies to start implementing something like this? Too small and it'll kill you with...
No, it's like I said, it's a conversation. You're never too small. Whenever you can't do it is when you don't have anybody there. It's the moment a founder shows up or a CEO has a vision, start talking, start thinking, what's my value to investors? What's their value to me? What's my value to team? What's their value to me? It's never too early and never too late. And in fact, this is why it's an enduring practice. The flip to the last slide here. There you go. No, up. I'm sorry. Up one more. There you go. This is a practice. This is not a task. And what do I mean by a practice? If you've done yoga and martial arts, you don't show up the first day, get on the mat, do downward dog and go, tick, I did that, I'm done. No, it's an emergent practice that continues to pay dividends the more you do it. My advisor who was oversubscribed, my client who was oversubscribed, who did this practice, took her 6 weeks to get to a point of doing it over and over and over again, where she says, okay, it's not changing. I go, great. So she did that. She got oversubscribed, and she had more than just raising investment in that annual report, because it had all of her 5 alliances in there. And then she got that done in January. She calls me up in May and she goes, Rob, everything that I forecast to be done at the end of the year is already done. I go, great, do it again. Do another one. So the ability for clarity to lead to a natural alignment, energetic alignment with your 5 alliances is profound. And once you have alignment, what people don't realize is acceleration just naturally happens. You get your ROI, your return on investment, your return on people, your return on partners, just hits multiples, 3 to 5x.
Great question from Adam.
Yeah.
Who leads our local Toronto group, if anyone's out there.
Sure.
The difference between a partner and a supportive community.
Who cares? You make it up. These are just categories. The point is that your relationship, if you want to imagine somebody as a partner, they're a partner. If you think that they're a signal data point of a proliferation of others, then they're a supportive community. These are axiomatic, not hard-edged precision terms. These are accurate terms, not meant to be overindulged with 0.001. Just go with whatever I said. Go with your feeling state, right? If it feels good to call somebody a partner, you're a partner.
You've got a lot of left brain founders here.
Of course.
Hating you now. So let's say someone wants to go through something like this for their company, their scale up, their what are the things they need to think about, and what would it look like if they did want to work with you on something like this?
So I'll give one more insight here for the engineering brain, and I'm high functioning autistic myself in a certain regard. So what I do is I think of human gain in a triad. Like if you're Indian, Pitta Vata Kapha, Ayurvedic. If you're a mathematician, point line plane. So the axiomatic triad of gain for every individual on the planet, no exception, is awareness, behaviors, and circumstances. That's it, ABC. What I don't do is focus on awareness states. I could care less what your awareness is, because if I can identify the behaviors and the circumstances I want to give to you and to have from you, then your awareness is going to come along for the ride. And this goes in direct opposition to most of the marketing out there, which is all about raising awareness and education, right? We got to raise awareness and education. I skip straight to the behaviors. I say, okay, here's how I want you to show up. Here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to have. Here's what I want to have. Here's what I'm going to do. I don't care what your individual why is. Doesn't matter to me. Not necessary for success. Necessary for you to have a good life, and I want you to have your why, but that's not part of the tableau of what we're talking about here. So we can be very mechanical and very, very exacting and directive with behaviors and circumstances, because these are physical evidence that has no nuance. Either they wrote the check for 100K or they didn't. There's no editorial involved. So if we stay with B's and C's, when you think about what are the gains that I'm looking for and I'm hoping to deliver, it'll make it a lot easier for engineering and sort of left brain people to really max this out in a very efficient and effective way.
And let's say efficient and effective way. Founders want to do this themselves.
Yeah.
What does this look like? So we're going to share that after this call.
Yeah, I'll send you the practice guide that I sent out to 5,995 venture teams in 100 countries that use this to their own effect from ideation, design, pilot, scale, and exit and all of them found benefit out of it, and all of them posted their future annual value reports on our website and was part of the judging criteria. And they really valued it.
All of 9,900 did it?
Well, in order for them to qualify to get into judging, everybody who got into judging had to post this. This was one of the criteria. That's right.
This was pre-ChatGPT, folks, so that means they probably did it.
And and here's the kicker. You'll see, but I'm going to tell you, you have to write in the past tense, and you have to write it out by hand. There's no typing. You could type it up afterwards, but the reason we want you to write it out by hand is for neurological entrainment and recruitment. And also, I don't care if you write on an electronic or paper and pen or mechanical pencil and paper, but you have to write out your future annual value report by hand. That's a non-negotiable rule, and that's part of the practice.
We'll attach that. We'll attach that template here after.
It's in the guide. Any other questions? Happy to take them.
Folks, if you have questions, post them in the chat group, and as well clarify one point. Do you mean that you asked this from?
And let's go back to my outcomes that I was trying to get. How am I doing on the outcomes? Let's go back up a slide.
Do we know a little bit more on these 5 alliances and how we can use them to drive creation and also position?
In the chat, just tell me what number I hit for you guys. I'll assume that if I got the 3, 1, and 2 came along for the ride. We haven't gotten to 3 yet because that's what we're going to give you, but we've been talking about the future annual value report practice. Say 3 if you want to get the practice guide in the chat, and I'll assume that you got 1 and 2.
And what takeaways do you guys have from this session as well? Obviously, Forward and our consulting collectives here to help, and Rob is here to help you guys for folks interested in diving deeper in this. Let's see a bit more in detail around circumstances, behavior.
Circumstances are sort of the physical surroundings. Like, I either have an office or I don't. That's a circumstance. I've got a product in market that's cash flowing is a circumstance. I've raised 1.5 million as a circumstance that's in the bank. So think of it in very loose but definitive physical reality terms, that it's something that I can observe. And if the Greek course was here, everybody would objectively agree yes or no. There's no maybes. It's a definitive end state that can be easily observed, recognized, and validated or verified. And behaviors are what behaviors are. You can consider behaviors as anything that's also equally observable. So I raise my hand. It's an observable behavior. Did I do it? Yes or no? I think that's a yes. So did he write the check? That's an observable behavior, right? So I hope that helps clarify.
What I've observed is I've seen a lot of 3s, couple 1, 2, 3s. It looks like people have certainly been kind of getting what it's all about. I think getting it's one thing. I think doing it's another thing. And I think even more than doing it is the next steps after doing it and refining it.
This presentation was me showing you the principles that I work by, and that is also embedded in the future annual value report. I started with the outcomes that you're going to receive at the end. I clarified that. There's no difference to what I did on this slide than what you would be doing on your future annual value report, right? So we can always enter a meeting in a room with an expectation for a result if we're intending on getting a result. If we're not intending on getting a result and just having, some espresso and getting wide with conversation, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to turn every meeting, every social engagement into a directive for an outcome. But I find that if you're in a commercial proposition, you should be directive towards an outcome, and the outcome should be something that is valued by the audience you're speaking to. And you should have that at a point of clarity, and you should tell them right up front. Here's what I hope you get out of our meeting today. Like I said for Matt, here's what I hope Matt gets out of this meeting for today, right? So when you show up with a clear expectation of result in mind and are able to communicate that, your probabilities for achieving the result go off the charts, as opposed to let's see what happens.
And our result for this meeting is hoping that you guys get value out of it enough that you can drive this forward yourself or work directly with us for fundraising, support, strategy, walking through these types of frameworks, anything from startups and scale ups all the way up to enterprises looking to hire, expand in new regions, decarbonize their supply chains. We have awesome folks like Rob in our consulting collective who are alongside us and often much better than us at specific things so that we can help the community move the world and your business forward. Any questions, folks? That's kind of what we do. So Francine asked about alliances and stakeholders. So maybe double clicking on the difference between those terms. I don't know if you were here when he started on his stakeholder rant. Stakeholder, someone you drive the stake through the heart of and you steal.
Well, it's just so passive and just so static. And I like the divergence for me is that allies, you know, are oftentimes emergent in their dynamic, and they change and evolve over time. So, and we should expect that if we're going to be on a path of progress in a venture. You know, you're not a snapshot of your future right now. You're at a place in which you're projecting a vision of where you want to be, and that path towards getting there is going to require allies along the way, ideal allies that both gain something from you and that you gain from. And that's different than a stakeholder who is helping you put up a tent in the ground on a plot that's never going to move. So
agreed. And it looks like Francine was saying she loved the point as well. Yeah. Jamie Dimon has stakeholders. He talks about how much he loves them. Alliances are the folks you actually work with and working for and giving value to.
Yeah. Awesome, Avital. He's already been doing this for a while, but never fought. Fantastic. Most of us have been doing this, but in a tacit way. I'm just making very simple things explicit and giving you a very clear framework for how to bring this into your own work, hopefully, and add value to what you do and what you accomplish, because we're depending upon you guys. We need more climate tech and climate impact out in the world. It's very important what you're doing. And I think you guys should realize that you're not supplicants looking for a handout. You're drivers of value into the world, and you should be appreciated for that. And if people aren't appreciating you for the value that you have, you're speaking to the wrong people. Move on. There are ideal allies waiting for you who will get what you're doing, who will grok it, and who will want to be part of that to its ultimate success.
That includes investors. They're not the God that holds the keys to everything. Trust me,
especially investors. Investors are in a position right now where they're stuck with too much capital and not enough good deals.
Or they're stuck with
their own fault
to raise their next fund and really needing to perform with the companies they do invest in. So they're not in the comfy, cozy position that they have always been in, let's say.
Yeah.
Now's the time. The market is certainly tough, and you all recognize that with fundraising, with investing in companies, etc. But the ones who do survive, the winners, they get to eat up all of the remaining spoils, so to speak. So be one of the winners by aligning your different alliances so that your army can conquer whoever that terrible fiend is that you have. Sound good, folks? Any other questions? While doing that, I'm going to share just a little bit more about some of the upcoming stuff that we have with Forward. Again, if you're interested in this, be sure to check out the event later. We'll have the recording posted there, as well as the process, the future value creation report. We've got our upcoming calls for circularity, waste management, recycling. Looks like tomorrow, as well as a new member call not tomorrow, in a week, as well as a new member call to help folks get up to speed on the platform. We realize it can be a lot. I posted as well in the chat our new member onboarding checklist. Highly recommend going through that. It's 5 to 10 minutes, and it'll 5 to 10x your results with the community by knowing where things are, improving your profile, helping you meet other folks, getting connected into the ecosystem, and finding all of the different types of value, resources, tools, etc., that can help you drive your business and alliances forward. We've got branding and vision around early market traction, hiring for climate tech and sustainability, doubling your startup's runway, building out successful corporate innovation pipelines, and much more coming for you guys. It's all in the online events. Just go in there, be sure to RSVP. I get the Circle app. It's really important, because otherwise you don't get notifications about the events that you RSVP to. So a lot of times we had 79, 80 RSVPs. half of them looked like they missed the boat on that notification, so they missed out on this with Rob and the session on the 5 alliances, and they probably don't have 5 alliances. And that might be a good way for them to figure out what's not working well in their business so that they can build towards the future. You've got to know stuff's happening, so get the Circle app. And Rob, I'd love for you to give a kind of outro, anything you want to leave people with, and then I'll do the same.
Sure. I think if I'm going to say an outro, the idea of being able to be clear about outcomes and about gains, and think about the ABCs: awareness, behaviors, and circumstances. If you find yourself talking a lot about awareness, try to understand what the behavioral analog would be, or the circumstantial change. Like when I was working with a lot of nonprofits who were in esteem building, the question I would ask them is, well, what is it that somebody with lots of esteem can do that someone with low esteem can't? Help me understand that in a behavioral context. So help yourself to get to clarity and use these frameworks to help structure your clarity in a way that's value adding to your organization and your venture. And I think if you approach this as a practice, as opposed to just a nice little concept, it's something that you start to do a little bit in your day-to-day work, you'll find that your decision-making and your actions become more and more powerful and potent as you go along. And that's my hope for you guys.
And if you're someone like me that doesn't do this naturally and you need someone else to help you see the forest from the trees, Rob is a great person. Reach out for consulting and advisory help. We help with, again, as we said, hiring, tax accounting, carbon footprinting, legal, IP, grants. And no, we're not jacks of all trades. We have incredible consultants through the world's largest climate and sustainability ecosystem and platform who are experts at what they do in your region to help you with advancing your climate sustainability goals and personal career. Just forward.earth/consulting. Real hard to remember the URL. And after this, if you haven't posted your intro, post an intro and introduce yourself. Reach out to 3 to 5 members. They'll be thankful that you did. And see how you can help each other move the world forward. And that's our pun there. I will leave you all now. Have a great day, morning, evening, night, depending on where you're coming from. And thanks so much for taking the time, folks.
Have a great one. Cheers, guys.